Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 629, and today's date is March 30th, 2015, and the title of this episode is U.S.-backed Saudi forces ready for ground operation in Yemen. Let's get right into the economic collapse news now. We are moving into the month of April, and we understand in Greece their emergency funding comes due in June. And we realize that Cyprus is going to meet with Putin on April 8th, and they're going to talk about a variety of things, one of them being reducing the gas prices from Russia, also lifting the embargo of certain types of Greek products. And we can see right now, it looks like the Syriza government is trying to position itself to remove itself from the Eurozone. And they're saying that this visit is very important for Greece. We intend to deepen our relationship with Russia in the energy sector and thereby hope to gain a significant advantage. You also have to remember, Russia is planning a new gas pipeline that's going to go through Turkey, eventually through Greece. This will spur economic growth in the country. Lifting the embargo would create more opportunities for the farmers there to sell their goods and to help the economy out. And we can even see Russia step in and give some type of financial assistance to the banks, to the government, to try to get the country on the right track. And we're going to have to see how all this plays out as we get closer to April 8th. But I do believe that Greece right now looks like they might be maneuvering towards the Russian end and removing themselves from the ECB. Now, we understand that all the countries in Europe, they're sick and tired of austerity, and as you know, as they take on more and more debt, the people actually suffer, not the government. The governments receive the money. That money goes off to pay for the creditors. It goes to the banks. It goes into government pockets. It never really reaches the people. And basically what happens then is the IMF, the Eurozone tells each one of these countries, okay, you have to cut programs. You have to tell people they're going to be out of work. And this is what happens, and the people actually suffer. And the people in most of these countries now are protesting, saying, we've had enough. And in Brussels, tens of thousands of people decided to protest against austerity. And we've seen this in Greece. We've seen it in Cyprus. We've seen it in France, Spain, Italy. And it is spreading. And people were carrying banners reading, yes, there is an alternative. And as we can see, that each one of these countries, as they're continually given more and more debt, the country collapses. It cannot be sustained. And then the central bankers swoop in and they steal the natural resources of the country, because this is their major plan. We have to remember, the private Western central banking system is in its end game here. They're trying to get as much as they possibly can. They're trying to keep the system propped up so they can get the war started, to kind of cover all this up so no one realizes it was them. But we all know it is them that caused all of this, and it's time to get rid of them. Australia right now, Australia's federal government looks to set and introduce a tax on bank deposits in the May budget. Ironically, the idea of a bank deposit was raised by Labour in 2013 and was criticized by Tony Abbott at the time. Well, it looks like a lot of things have changed in the last 2 years. Stephen Munchenberger from the Australian Bankers Association said it would be a damaging move for the government. It's going to make it harder for banks to raise deposits, which are an important way of funding banks, and therefore for us to fund the economy, he said. And we also oppose it because, particularly at this point in time, with low interest rates, a lot of people who are relying on their savings for their incomes are already seeing very low returns, and this will actually mean they get even less money. And by doing this does not help the people. It helps the banks out. It helps the banks bring in more money. Remember, everything the central bankers do, it is not to help the people. They do not have an allegiance to a country or to a people. The allegiance is to themselves. It's profit, pushing debt, controlling the people, making themselves more and more money, giving themselves more power, more control. That's it. If they have to put a country into war, they will do it. If they have to have a country use nuclear weapons on another country, they will do it. They do not care. They're ready for what is coming. They have their underground bunkers. And they're hoping, when all's said and done, and the population is reduced by the wars, they would like to pop out once again and restart the system and start fresh. This is their plan. And we see the economies here in the United States, throughout Europe, Australia, and especially Canada now, they're starting to decline very, very quickly. I mean, we've seen Target close their stores. 17,000 people unemployed. I mean, they're continually telling us that the economy is doing better and better, and things are going very well. But why are all these stores closing if everything is fine? There's more people in the workforce today with these great jobs, and we have stores closing? It makes no sense. It makes sense if you look at it from our perspective, that the economy is collapsing. And when you're in a collapse situation, things contract. Retail stores close because the spending from the people who are not working dries up. So they have no sales. When the stores have no sales, they don't have to order the goods from the factories. If the factories do not have to produce the goods, they don't need the raw material. If they don't need the raw material, guess what? The Baltic Dry Index drops. And this is exactly what we're seeing. I mean, the Baltic Dry Index is around 599 points right now. If we look back a year ago at this point, it was around 1,400 to 1,500. So there's a very big difference. Now in Canada, another store is closing. Future Shop stores. Future Shop stores across Canada are closing effectively immediately, to the shock of customers and dismay of hundreds of employees losing full and part-time jobs. Best Buy Canada, a subsidiary of Best Buy Company Inc. that owns and operates both Best Buy and Future Shop stores, said in a statement Saturday that it will be closing 66 Future shops for good, while 65 others will be converted into Best Buys. The move will result in a loss of about 500 full-time and 1,000 part-time jobs. Again, as you continually have more and more retail shops closed down, where are the people going to find work? And we're continually having stores here in the United States closed down. And we're going to see more closed down as we move throughout the summer, because this is their worst time for retail. We just passed the best time for retail. That was the holiday season, and it was a bust. It didn't work out. And during this time, during the holiday season, we had stores shutting down. Macy's announced right after the holiday season, 14 stores. We had Aeropostale during the holiday season telling everyone they're closing their stores. And we had many other companies out there saying, yes, we will be closing our stores. Some of them just completely went out of business. We see for the fourth month in a row, personal spending growth missed expectations with a 0.1% gain in February. They were expecting a 0.2% rise. But guess what? It didn't happen. The only reason we got the 0.1% was because of Obamacare. That's where all the money is going for spending. And this growth rate remains below all of 2014 growth. The savings rate jumped to the highest since 2012. People are looking at the situation and they're trying to keep their money. They're very nervous. They're worried about what's going to happen, and they're keeping their money at this time. They're not going out and they're not spending. So it looks like from what's been going on, they might have to revise that GDP once again to maybe 0%. But again, of course, as we know, they manipulate the numbers and they will push it up to a positive number if they can. It's getting harder and harder for them to manipulate because the real economic indicators are closing in around them. And basically what's going on in the country and they're manipulating numbers, they're moving further and further away from each other. And it's getting harder and harder to explain. We're in a perfect, fantastic recovery, but we have all these people unemployed. We have all these retail stores closing. We have housing barely making it. And we see that prices are starting to level off and come down. We see that houses are on the market longer and longer. And they're doing everything they possibly can to push this system up. And they don't care how they do it as long as they continually push it up. Because they need to. Because they need to get that war started in the Middle East against Russia to cover up what is coming. And that is the collapse. They don't want to be blamed for what's going to happen. The Dallas Fed has basically collapsed. This is the lowest since June of 2011. It's the fourth month in a row that it missed. The Dallas Fed was the last lower than this in June 2011. Employees contracted, production plunged, new orders collapsed. It's a complete disaster. But we're seeing many layoffs now in the country. And we're seeing that these people are having a very difficult time trying to find work. Because when you get laid off and you start putting out your resume and no one is responding to your resume, people start to get nervous. They say, what's going on here? I listen to the corporate media. They're telling us that the unemployment rate is at 5.5%. Things are getting better. We're in a recovery. The stock market is going up. Why can't I find a job when I put my resume out there? Why aren't I getting a response? What is going on here? And what happens is they have a short severance package, maybe 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. When that runs out, they might go on to unemployment, if they can. And then they take a part-time job, and that is counted as employed. And we see that U.S. corporations announced thousands of layoffs this week amid a series of plant closures, mergers, consolidations, and signs of declining economic growth. U.S. Steel announced 2,080 layoffs at its Granite City Works in Illinois. The Pittsburgh-based steelmaker plans to lay off over 4,500 employees nationwide. Worthington Industries of Columbus, Ohio, announced plans to lay off 555 employees. Ohio-based Republic Steel announced 200 layoffs. H.J. Heinz announced plans to buy Kraft Foods Group in a $36.6 billion deal. And it looks like they're going to cut roughly about 5,000 jobs. The fate of tens of thousands of people that work for Radio Shack is in limbo right now. We could see 27,000 people and 4,000 locations completely disappear in a blink of an eye. Office supply retailer Staples, which announced plans to merge with Office Depot in February, the merger would entail the closure of about 1,000 stores, laying off tens of thousands of workers. So we can see where we're headed here. People are not going to be able to find work. The system is crashing around us. It's collapsing. And it's getting worse and worse as time goes on. But we have to understand, the U.S. government, the central bankers, they need to keep the system propped up. This is why we see the stock market drop down by a couple hundred points, and all of a sudden it's propped right back up. They push it right back up, and they have the ability to do this. They have the ability to do the propping of the stock market, the suppressing of the precious metals. They even have the ability to show that, yes, people are buying houses now. They did it all throughout 2013, 2014 by giving hedge funds and investment companies free money. And it looks like they're doing it once again. They're trying to convince everyone here in America that this is the best time to buy a home. They want everybody in. This is why they created the program with 3% down. Subprime people, come on in. You have a heartbeat? We'll give you a loan. Banks now, 0 deposit, 0 closing costs. Buy a house. You're buying at the height of the market. We saw what happened back in 2007, 2008 when people purchased at the height of the market. All of a sudden, things started to fall apart. Actually, I'm seeing them now. I mentioned them in my other report where people have their houses on the market for much longer. Now, it does not happen in every single place at once, but it starts and it starts spreading. And I've seen it in the Florida region. I've seen it in the New York region. I've seen it in the California region. And it will start to spread all over the place. And it will take people by surprise. We see today that the pending home sales all of a sudden surged like you cannot believe. up by 12%. It looks like the stock market, all of a sudden it's down 300 points and it surges back up to 300 points. It's the same with the real estate market. They decided to push out the free money and have these investment companies, hedge funds, purchase homes like there's no tomorrow to push all of this up once again. And you can see by the chart, we had a decline in August, in September, in October, in November, in December, and all of a sudden we had, boom, it shot up. It looks like the GDP also. All of a sudden, everything's declining, and all of a sudden we went up to 6% GDP. This is all fake, phony, false. They're trying to convince everyone. Everyone needs to get in. We see the student loan debt. And this is the original data that comes from the United States Federal Reserve and National Credit Bureaus. 40 million Americans are now in debt because of their university education. On average, they have about 4 loans with a total balance of about $29,000. According to the Fed, student loans have the highest delinquency rate of any form of household credit, having surpassed credit cards in 2012. Well, if all these people are getting jobs, why do they have a problem paying off their student loans? Because as we reported, 80% of the people cannot find the high-paying job. So they go to get a part-time job, and they don't make enough money to pay for these loans. Actually, they have to live with their parents. Since 2010, student debt has been the second largest category of personal debt, just after home mortgage. The delinquency rate for student loans is now hovering near an all-time high since they started collecting data 12 years ago. Only 37% of total student loan balances are currently in repayment and not delinquent. Only 37%. The rest, nearly 2 out of 3, are either behind on payment, in all-out default, or have entered some type of deferral program. Remember back many reports ago, we talked about how Obama was coming up with these deferral programs to help people to spread out their debt, or maybe they didn't have to pay. Well, it's not working because most of the people cannot find jobs, and the deferral program is not working. Even in U.S. bankruptcy court, student debt cannot be discharged in almost all cases. But you have to remember, Obama is trying to remove this, where they want people to declare bankruptcy. Why? Because then the government can bail it out. So the Fed's own analysis shows that student debt is a cause for people in their 20s and 30s to live at home with their parents. They're in debt. They don't have good paying jobs. And most of them are getting ready to default. This is a recovery? No. This is a collapse of the system. And this is not just the only bubble that's going to burst. It's going to be in the real estate market. It's going to be in the stock market. It's going to be in the derivative market. It's going to be in the auto industry, because all of this has been pumped up the same way. Junk in, junk out. We saw it back in 2007, 2008 with the subprime mortgages. Guess what? All those junk mortgages going into these securities, guess what happens? Eventually, they completely fall apart. We're going to see the same thing all over the place. They only can keep this going because they can continually manipulate the numbers. Otherwise, we are collapsing. We're in a collapse. And this is why they're trying to push war so hard throughout the Middle East and with Russia and the other players, North Korea, China. And they're going to continually do this until they actually get a war started. They will not stop. Now, out in Turkey, we see the Turkey Ministry of Economy is considering using local currency, either the Russian ruble or the Turkish lira. They're going to bypass the dollar completely and the euro completely. And we can see that Turkey joining Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan in the newly forced Eurasian Economic Union has been floated by both Moscow and Turkey. So they might be getting another member to join the Eurasian Union at this time. Now, China, they're planning to invest about $500 billion in other countries. By 2020, the volume of China's investment in other countries will exceed the $500 billion, because you can see what they're doing. They are making economic deals all over the world. They're helping countries with their infrastructure. They're helping build roads, schools, hospitals, and at the same time, while China is in there doing this, we have the United States bringing in the military, forcing the dollar on these countries. Now, when we look at the BRICS system, is this a perfect system? No, absolutely not. Will it eventually turn into a system like we see with the private Western central banks? Yes, it will, because we're going to have corruption, we're going to have greed, and we will end up the same exact way. But we look at the situation right now, and we see that the dollar is dying. We see the BRIC system now emerging. And eventually what's going to happen, as time goes on, we will be back in the same exact place. And this is why we need to stop and get rid of all types of central bank systems. Especially here in the United States, and especially in Canada, Europe, Australia, it is time to stop all of this. And I'm hoping that we all band together when they try to push this war, and people start waking up like, I don't know if I want my child, my cousin, my sister, my brother to go off to war. Because what are we really fighting here? We're fighting about which currency should be the main currency controlled by the central bankers. And this is nothing that we should be fighting about. It'd be easier for us to say, okay, hold on. It's time to get rid of the central bank here in the United States. Let the government create the money, the currency, with absolutely no interest. They don't need to borrow it. They can create it. It's in the Constitution. And we need to band together, and there will be a time that we will need to come together as a people, not just here in the United States. It will have to happen in Canada. It will have to happen in Europe, Australia. And we need to say no. No more. You are not allowed in any of our countries. Never again. Now, as we know, FATCA was created to go after those people who are earning money in other countries, who have savings in other countries. And the United States government central bankers wanted to go out there and tax those people. Because what they're doing is they are looking for more and more revenue, placing taxes on people, and they're trying to bring in the revenue to pay for this debt. Because as you know, if the debt continually grows, guess what? The interest rates continually grows. So they need the revenue coming in to help pay for this interest. Now, of course, as we know, most of the people here in the United States have been losing their jobs. They went from a full high-paying job to a part-time job, and the revenue isn't coming in. So they have to go out and look for this money. And again, a lot of people are saying, you know what, then I don't want to be a citizen of the United States, and they're removing themselves. And we can see right now that there are some people in the government who don't believe that we should have FATCA. And it looks like they were trying to repeal FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, but it failed to reach the Senate floor. And of course, they don't want this repealed because they realize if interest rates should go up, the country is doomed. The government would not be able to pay for the interest on the debt. It just would not work. Actually, many things would start to crumble and collapse. Student loans, derivative market, the stock market, the real estate market, it would all come tumbling down. Now, we understand that the U.S. government central bankers are trying to push the TPP out to other countries, and they're trying to have this agreement. This is the U.S.-led Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Agreement. And this is all kept a secret. They don't want the American people to know anything about it. They don't want Congress to know anything about it. Almost like Obamacare. You have to pass it to read it. Well, you need to pass the TPP to read it because this benefits the corporations to put us further into a fascist country. And there have been bits and pieces that have been leaked. And recently, there was a leaked chapter from the U.S.-led Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Agreement, which allows firms to sue the countries they are operating in via private courts, steering clear of national jurisdiction to the benefit of the corporations, to the benefit of the central banking system. The 55-page document discusses various mechanisms that enable companies involved in a transnational corporation investment to sue the states they operate in without the involvement of national courts. Companies can file a lawsuit if they believe to be losing profit or even have a lower expectation of profit due to changes in the environment, health, or other regulatory objectives. This does not benefit the people whatsoever. This is for the corporations and the central banking systems to bypass the laws of every single country. This is what this is all about. And if this is what's been leaked, I can't even imagine what the rest of the document must say. I mean, it's probably so horrific, so not for the people, so heavily guarded that they don't want any of that to be leaked out whatsoever until it is passed. I mean, look at Obamacare. No one was reading that, or of course, Pelosi was out there saying, you will be able to read it once you approve it. It's the same thing with the TPP. Now, we understand that the United States government central bankers are trying to keep control of the people. And we see that the TSA has their new behavior screening. We discussed this before. And we could see that their checklist is absolutely ridiculous. This is not going to stop any type of terrorist whatsoever. Actually, TSA has never stopped a terrorist whatsoever. Basically, all they've done is controlled the people, forced you to get pat down, forced you to go into an x-ray machine, forced you to stand online like a good, controlled sheep. That's all they've done. And we can see part of their checklist on screening passengers in their spot referral report program. They're looking at signs of deception. And you know what they are? These are a shaved beard, whistling, wearing improper attire for the location. Well, what's very interesting is that I remember a couple years ago when I was flying from New York to Florida, we knew we were going to end up in Florida, so during the winter, you'd have, your jacket on, but short sleeves. So if you took your jacket off, I'd be in short sleeves, and that looked kind of strange in New York because it's winter. So does this really help whatsoever? No. And passengers are given a preliminary observation and behavior analysis, and then, if suspected of terrorism, they are pulled aside and inspected further. This program does not work. It is a waste of money. Actually, all these x-ray machines, all the TSA is a complete waste of time. The terrorism is not coming from the people. The terrorists are the government, and they're not walking through the airport getting checked out. They go around the system and they push terror. The system is there to control the people, to keep you in the lines, to keep you controlled, to keep you doing what they want you to do. And right now, most of the people are doing just that. Now, out in Ukraine, it seems that the Russian gas monopoly Gazprom has asked the Russian government to consider extending its discount on gas supplied to Ukraine for 3 more months. And they're saying that they're considering this to help out the Ukrainian situation, to give the special pricing for the winter. And we'll have to see how this plays out and if this does go through, because then again, we know Ukraine is trying to start a major offensive. Russia is extending a hand right now, or I should say Gazprom. They're looking to Russia to say, yes, this is okay, to help out what is going on in Ukraine, because they're looking at the people, because the people are the ones who are suffering in these countries. We see the leader of the self-proclaimed Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics have offered Kiev to set up a joint working group to reform the Ukrainian constitution. Now, they're extending their hand to Kiev, and I don't think Kiev is going to work with them whatsoever. I think they're just going to hear this and continue on with their war efforts. Now, the OSC is out there, and they're saying, and they've reported, that 5 MSTS self-propelled howitzers were not declared by the Ukrainian side in violation of the Minsk agreements in an area near the government-controlled Volnovakha. The OSCE observed 5 152mm self-propelled howitzers stationary at a location from which they should have been withdrawn. So Kiev was caught. And it seems like they're getting caught quite often. The OSCE has their drones in the air, and they spotted Kiev shelling the Donbass region. They've caught them keeping the heavy artillery and maneuvering it around and keeping it on the contact line. And now this. We see that one civilian was killed as Ukrainian troops opened fire on a civilian car near the settlement of Shirokino. And as we know, as I reported over the weekend, Ukrainian troops were bringing in their heavy artillery to fire upon this region, and they did exactly that, and it looks like they hit someone in a car. We see the Ukrainian right sector leader is out. Dmitry Yarosh stated that the unruly residents of eastern Ukraine should be deported and deprived of their civil rights. So does it sound like these people really want peace? No. The right sector leader added that the region's unruly residents must also be dealt with. If we get rid of the unruly ones, everything will be fine, quiet and peaceful. Well, basically what he's saying is, those people in those regions who are a threat to their authority, if we can get rid of all those people, the rest will be able to fall under the Ukrainian rule and be controlled. Well, isn't that what's going on here in the United States? Think about it. They're creating lists. They want to get rid of those people who are a threat to their authority, and they're hoping once they get rid of all those people, the rest will fall in line and do whatever they want. This is what they do. This is why they've been spying on everyone. This is why they've been creating lists of everyone. There is no difference. You have to remember, the Ukrainian government is controlled by the U.S. government. They're doing it, whatever they're doing there is what they're going to do here in the United States. Actually, they would have done it sooner if there was no constitution. Now, out in Crimea, there was a homemade bomb that was discovered in Sevastopol, and they came in, they cordoned off the area, and they got the homemade bomb. We also had another incident in Ukraine. A railway tank car with fuels and lubricants has exploded. It was headed to Kharkiv, and we can see there was no fatalities there, but we can see that they're blaming this on the southeastern people, saying that they're the ones who did this. It looks like it was terrorism, and we can see the false flags are starting to build up at this time. Now, as we know, the United States, NATO, Ukraine has continually said Russia is bringing in military, tanks are rolling in, troops are rolling in. Well, we have to remember about the Open Sky Treaty. Many different countries get to fly over each country that they have the treaty with. The U.S. can fly over Russia. Ukraine can fly over Russia. And they're doing this once again, because Russia is going to show them that there is no troop buildups, there are no tanks, there are no soldiers on the border of Ukraine. American and Ukraine specialists are going to fly over the territory of Russia between March 30th and April 4th under the Open Sky Treaty. They've done this many times before, and they have seen absolutely nothing. This is how you know this is all propaganda, them telling you that Russia is invading, Russia has 150,000 troops, Russia has 700 tanks, we just can't find them all. So we can see right now, the U.S. is going to be flying a Boeing OC-135B American observation aircraft over Russia. They'll be taking pictures, to prove that, yeah, there is nothing there whatsoever. Now, Russia is deploying 96 military units in Crimea, which they can do because it's part of Russia. There's no problem with that because they can see what's coming. They can see that Ukraine is not sticking to the Minsk agreement. They see tanks being rolled in where they're being supplied by the United States government central bankers. Heavy weapons are coming in to Ukraine. They're getting ready for a major offensive. During all of this, we can see that Britain is staging the biggest drill in 13 years. Of course, it's all because of Russia. That's why they're having this drill. More than 30 UK Royal Air Force planes took to the skies for Rising Panther, Britain's largest aerial exercises in more than a decade. And we can see all this is being done because of Russia. US, South Korea begin their large-scale Navy drill. And we can see the war game involves about 7,600 Marines and sailors of the two countries, 30 naval vessels, 80 aircraft, 40 armored vehicles. Among them are 3 U.S. amphibious ships. And of course, this is to provoke North Korea. They're hoping that maybe they'll bring some of their warships or something out there, and there might be some type of conflict where they can get a war started. Everyone is flexing their muscles for war. Now, out in Yemen, the Yemeni people are banding together. The protests are getting larger and larger. They're chanting down with Saudi Arabia. They're getting very angry. They're joining up with the Houthi people. And we see right now that the Saudi-led airstrikes are continuing. And people are wondering, like, when will this end? Like, what is their objective? Well, their objective is to have the Houthi people withdraw and surrender to Saudi Arabia. This is the main objectives. Already, officials confirm they're planning to extend the war in Yemen. They thought it would be very quick. They just go in and do a couple bomb runs and everything would be fine. But now they're saying, you know something, this might be a little bit longer. We might need troops in there. And now they're saying this might last almost a half a year at this point. And every time they give us this type of information, it's always much longer and much worse. The Saudi-led coalition is ready to launch a ground operation in Yemen. Ground forces are trained and ready, will perform its duty in the right time, the source was quoted as saying. The spokesman also said that the coalition airstrikes targeted ballistic missiles, the airports, and they're trying to push the Houthi people back. But guess what? They're making gains. And this is why, once all this bombing is done, they're eventually going to have to go in with ground troops, unless the Houthi come out with their hands up and say, okay, we give, we're done here. But I don't think that's going to happen. Libya, the puppet government there, they are calling for the same thing that's happening in Yemen. They want the Arab League, they want them all to join in, and they want to start the same thing that's going on in Yemen in Libya, where this is turning out to be an all-out war in the Middle East. We see that the U.S. is continually striking into Iraq. And right now the U.S. is dodging accusations that it killed Iranian advisors in Iraq. The U.S. has indicated no involvement after accusations from Iran's Revolutionary Guard, which said an American drone killed 2 of its military advisors, helping the Iraqi forces fight against the radical Islamist organization, the Islamic State. And we have to understand that Iran is helping Iraq take back Tikrit. The U.S. doesn't want this to happen. They don't want them fighting against the Islamic State because it's their proxy army. And what's very interesting is that the U.S. and coalition forces conducted 8 airstrikes near Tikrit, but they hit the popular forces of Iraq instead of the Islamic State. It reminds me when they bomb inside Syria. They hit the infrastructure, they hit everything else, the people there, except for the Islamic State. And then the Islamic State comes back in and takes over the territory. U.S. General Lloyd Austin has apparently recommended that the U.S. military shield the new death squad terrorists being trained by the United States. and that is the Free Syrian Army, who are soon to be deployed across the country. General Austin told Congress on Thursday that he was currently waiting on the White House response to his recommendation. If Austin's recommendations are accepted, guess what? They're going after Assad, because the U.S. will shield them. They will be the ground troops, and they're going to make a dash towards Damascus with the help of the Islamic State. Assad realizes this. He knows that they're coming after him. This is why he's saying that he wants a bigger presence of the Russian fleet in the Tartus port. He realizes what's happening here. He understands that the Islamic State has increased their landmass while the U.S. and the coalition forces have been bombing in the area, because it makes no sense why they would. And we can see right now that Turkey has always been helping the Islamic State. Assad realizes this. They've been giving them a safe haven in that area, let them go through and right across into Syria. And we can see right now the Islamic State is completely controlled, and they're using this to get Assad. So we have many different things happening all at once. We have the build-up in Ukraine. They're not abiding by the Minsk agreement because they're getting ready for a major offensive. We have tanks being rolled in, Bradley, Abrams, tanks rolling into Ukraine, Humvees being delivered, weapons being attached on top. They're getting ready for a major offensive. We see in the Middle East, the U.S.-backed Saudi-led forces are bombing in Yemen. Soon there will be ground troops. This is going to spread into Libya. We see the puppet government there is already calling on the Arab forces to go and do the same thing in Libya. We see in Africa, the same thing is occurring in the entire region. We have troops in Ghana ready to go into Nigeria. The war has already begun. We're just waiting for that big bang when the corporate media says, hey, look, we have World War III on our hands. And that is coming very, very soon. And what's very interesting, as all of this is going on, we have that German wings crash. And I believe this is being used to keep everyone distracted from what's really going on, because they're playing this and they're pushing this as hard as they possibly can. But let's just visit this for a second. I mean, they're playing up that this pilot was suicidal, he was depressed, and they just continually going on and on and on. You know, he was in the cockpit, he might have had a pipe bomb down his sock, he had weapons, they're just making up all different things. And a lot of it I just made up, but they're just continually going on and on how he was ready to kill everyone, and it's just being pushed way too hard. And one of the major pieces of data used to justify the suicide pilot comes from the alleged CVR recording, where we told that you can hear his breathing. The claim has been directly contested by Gerard Arnoux, an 18-year Air France captain and a spokesperson for the National Monitoring Committee on Aviation Safety. And he's saying that, yeah, there's something wrong with this story. It's not possible to hear a pilot's breath on the CVR. Arnoux states that the cockpit of the first-generation A320s are very noisy, so much so that in flights, pilots had to use headsets to speak to each other. The idea that the CVR could pick up his breathing with so much noise is impossible. The official story claims that the investigators heard the beep of the knob that Lubitz used to start the plane on its descent. He said that, well, the knob makes no sound, so what did they really hear? He also said and wonders why no mention was made by investigators of hearing the loud, strident beeping made by the cockpit door console when the emergency access code is entered to open the cockpit door. He recognizes that the emergency unlock code could have been overridden by someone in the cockpit manually holding the lockdown button, but this would not have prevented the beeping once the code was entered outside. This would have been the clearest confirmation that one of the pilots had been locked out, yet no mention of it whatsoever. This is being used to divert the attention of what's going on in the Middle East and in Ukraine. We also had the report that the black box memory card was stolen because they're saying, oh, the black box was damaged. No, the memory card was stolen. But when you look at the black box, and I have a picture on the X22Report.com, and I also have it on the YouTube video, you can see it's not just one memory card. It's not an SD card. It's encased, and there's multiple memory interface cards mounted to catch everything. So basically what they're saying is they don't want the information out there of what really happened, because that keeps the airspeed, the controls, and all that other information. And it seems like they're trying to keep that hidden at this time. Now we understand that the Jade Helm drills are going to occur this summer. And we've seen a video put up by Dabu7 about how it's going to look and what they're doing now to practice. And again, we understand that this collapse of the economy is coming, and we understand that the government, U.S. government central bankers, they want to control the people because they realize this is going to be a disaster. And they need to round up those people who are going to be a threat to their authority. And what they're doing right now, of course they're saying that this is all because of terrorism and things like that, but it doesn't make any sense. Why would you practice this here in the United States, rounding up American citizens? It makes no sense. They're also going to set up cells of people and test how they're able to move around without getting too noticed in the community. So they're going to go in, pretend they're part of the community, to infiltrate those groups that might be a threat to their authority. This is what they're doing. And they're testing their abilities to basically blend in with the local environment and not stand out and blow their cover. And if this was going on in any country and this was being reported, the U.S. government central bankers would be out there saying, they are getting ready for martial law. Look what's going on. They're practicing. But here, the corporate media is sitting here going, nothing's happening. Please look the other way. But we know what's happening. And also, this is in direct violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits the U.S. military from functioning as domestic police. We can see, we know, we understand that this collapse is coming very soon. And we see the U.S. government central bankers are getting ready. They're practicing. And you need to get ready also. You need to get food, get medicine, have a weapon, keep cash on hand, get gold and silver, get toiletries. You need to be ready for what is coming, because you really don't want to be on the streets when this thing goes south, because a lot of people are not going to be ready, and they're going to be running around like crazy trying to get these supplies. It's better to have these supplies now than to run out later. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.